breaking and entering, drunk and disorderly, law and order. A former prosecutor and a defence lawyer, not your typical pairing. And the result? Conversations about crime and punishment that are guaranteed to get you thinking.
Welcome to Justice Matters with Joe Crowley and Lizzie Green, a brand new weekly podcast. Our episodes are available on Apple Podcast, Spotify and YouTube. Check out our Instagram for clips at Justice Matters Pod. Enjoy the episode. This episode contains descriptions of violence, including gun violence and execution-style killings. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, Lizzie.
Hello, Joe.
How are you?
I am excited to hear the next installment of the Lawyer X story. You left us hanging last week.
Well, I think probably people can guess how it plays out. But yeah, what an incredible story. I found it quite emotional actually going through it. I just was like, oh my God, so much death and lying. It was all so toxic.
But when they call it the TV show Underbelly, I mean, that is just the best title because it really is that dark, gross underbelly of society, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Nicola Gobbo got herself put herself right into the middle of it all.
Yeah.
So keep going.
All right. Well, I'll just do a quick recap. So Nicola Gobbo is defence barrister working in Victoria, and she is representing a whole lot of people accused of crimes and then often convicted of crimes, of drug trafficking or murder or some kind of violence during a period in Victoria called the Gangland Wars, which was from about 98 to 2010, where 36 people were executed, amongst other things, lots of drug making and possession.
I'm assuming other lower assaults.
I'm sure lots of other assaults, people getting shot in the stomach and not dying and then eating some chocolate cake and going to the hospital 5 hours later. You'll have to listen to episode 1 if you want.
Lots of drug consumption with your family.
Drug consumption with your family, the Hodson family. Interesting, the family that
the traditions,
snorts drugs together, stays together. I don't know.
A little different to mine. But,
yes, yeah, that's right. Each family
they like to eat a meal together. They like to
snort coke.
Yeah.
It was a case where the Victorian police said it was very difficult to solve and to stop, and so they said they had to go to some extraordinary measures. One of the measures they went to is to use a defence barrister as a police informant, and that was Nicola Gobbo. I think we'd got to the part in the story where she's working as a defence barrister. She's by now, this is sort of 2003, 2004. She's been a barrister now since 98, so it's sort of 6 years, but she has been an incredibly successful barrister. I mean, both in terms of the results she gets, but in the volume of work and the money that she makes. So she's very glamorous in that she often wears short skirts. She wears revealing sort of low cut tops. I'm not sure it's entirely appropriate for court.
Know. Well, and I don't know where you're going with that.
Well, she's certainly somebody who courts the media, I think, as well as the
all right,
clients.
So maybe we could just say she was flamboyant. And I don't know that. Anyway, different issue, but I don't like describing women's choice of fashion as some kind of sign of anything.
Wow. Okay. This is where listeners will have to listen to episode 1 where you were talking about, how good looking were the Moran brothers and whether they were better looking than
I wasn't talking
Carl
about
Williams.
their fashion.
Right. Okay.
Yes. All right. Fair point. But anyway, It's a slippery slope with women, I think, because professional men don't have the same degree of variety in clothes. And then to make comments on choice of skirt length or something, I think that is part of that.
Don't say toxic masculinity.
Patriarchal misogyny.
It was going to be something.
But
look, can I say, when I get up and I have to go to work and I just have to pull a suit out and pick the colour shirt, I'm so grateful.
But that's right. That's right. And I think, we shouldn't necessarily comment on your shirt style of a woman or anyway, but that's a different issue. And I'm not really defending her choice of fashion. I just think it shouldn't be relevant necessarily.
Okay. Let's say she's flamboyant.
Flamboyant.
Okay.
Attention seeking.
Attention seeking.
In all ways.
Yes. Yes. And so we finished last time with Terry Hodson, and I alluded to the fact that he was murdered and his wife Christine were murdered. So he was a drug dealer, low-level drug dealer, working on the Mockbell side of the Gangland War. So the two sides were the sort of the Mockbell family, and on the other side were the Moran family. That's an incredibly overly simplified version of it, but so I'm sure hopefully all the people in Victoria who know lots about this won't get too upset by my characterisation. But broad brush, Mockbell family versus Moran family.
Well, and to go into it in detail, we could do an entire series on...
Well, like Underbelly.
Yeah.
You absolutely could. So Terry Hodson's working on the Mockbell side, Carl Williams' side, but becomes a police informer and is working for, since 2001 as a police informer, but also as a drug trafficker. So he's allowed to continue as a drug trafficker because of some corrupt police officers, or at least one corrupt police officer who he's working with. And he gets involved in this incredible scheme where he and a corrupt police officer rob a drug house of the Mockbell, so the side he's on, and they get caught by the police.
And bitten by a dog.
And the corrupt officer, Michelle, gets bitten by a dog and has a limp for the rest of his life there because of it.
So you didn't tell us how he died, how Hodson dies.
Okay. So what happens is, so that September 2003 is when there's this break-in which goes awry, and Hodson's arrested and Michelle's arrested, and later Paul Dale. All three of them are charged, but not for a few months. So it's not until 2004 when they're all charged, early 2004. Now, Paul Dale, as we said last time, has always maintained his innocence, and although he was charged, he was never convicted of any of these offences. And so the story that I tell is going to be from Terry Hodson's version. So Terry Hodson decides to inform on Paul Dale and gives a very long and detailed interview about the break-in and how it occurred and Paul Dale's role in it. Terry Hodson realises that he's a dead man walking. He says that to some people. He doesn't realise how much of a dead man he is, because what he doesn't know is that somebody, and the police say it was Paul Dale, who a police officer, stole a file from police headquarters which had 31 information reports that Hodson had given on all of these underworld figures.
With his name on it?
With his name on it. And we know that, or the police know that Tony Mockbell got a copy of that folder, and it is alleged that Tony Mockbell was given the folder by his lawyer, Nicola Gobbo.
Who was sleeping with
Nicola Gobbo, who was sleeping with...
allegedly corrupt Officer Dale.
Correct.
Who is supposedly the one who took the file.
Correct.
So there's your link.
There's your link. But even more of a link and a conflict of interest. So Nicola Gobbo is representing Terry Hodson for the break-in. Paul Dale, when he is charged, she's also representing the people in the drug house that they tried to steal from, because the police raid that drug house, arrest everybody in it. So Nicola Gobbo is representing those three, and she's sleeping with Paul Dale. Also working for Tony Mockbell as his on hand.
Oh, what a tangled web!
Yeah, and it's in Tony Mockbell, the kingpin of crime, not to be named in any of this, and not to have his fingerprints on any of it.
That's right. So she's doing her job for him. Then she can't be doing anything else for these other alleged offenders.
Yes. Terry Hodson gets bail. He's going about his business, although he knows he's got a target on his back. So probably on the night of the 15th of May, well, I'll tell you what happens on the 16th of May, and then we can try and reverse engineer what happens. So 16 May 2004, his daughter goes over to the house. As she's walking in, she sees her father lying face down on the lounge room, thinks he's playing a joke, goes inside, sees her mother sitting on the couch, shot dead, father lying on the floor, shot dead. She screams. At that time, her brother, Andrew, he'd driven past earlier in the morning and he'd seen something that sort of wasn't right. I think, the curtains were shut or something, and thought it was a bit odd. On his way back from wherever he's going, he sees his sister's car in the driveway, decides, I should pop in and see mum and dad. As he's getting out of the car, he hears his sister scream, goes inside and sees the same scene. Now, they think that the person who kills Terry Hodson, I should say, this murder is never solved. And the police commissioner later said this is the greatest stain on the Victorian police because of the allegations of corrupt police and the fact that this was a police informant who was apparently under police protection when he is executed.
So just what came to my mind was Dale on bail.
Dale was on bail, and he was in fact in Bendigo, I think it was at the time, on a boys' weekend, which he'd invited Nicola Gobbo on, but she'd said no. But
so that was verified?
Verified by so many people that the police wondered whether he was over-alibied.
Right.
I've never heard that term, over-alibied.
Oh, I have.
Have you?
It might have been in a book, not in a case.
Anyway, they wondered whether he was over-alibied. He had so many alibis.
Well, my mind did go immediately to him.
So he is, in terms of actually doing the murder, in the clear. But if you order somebody to be murdered and pay somebody else to do it,
you're just as guilty. So
they think that it was a professional hit. They think they know who did it. They identified the professional hitman who they're pretty confident did it.
Was he part of the Gangland?
He was part of the Carl Williams Mockbell team.
Right.
And he had a penchant, this professional killer, for killing the wives of the people he was killing.
Yeah.
In 1987, in a professional hit, he'd killed the husband. He'd run out of bullets, so he just got a kitchen knife and slashed the wife's throat.
No.
Yeah. Just a horrible person.
Has he ever been brought to justice?
Karmic justice, because he was
dead?
one of the people who was executed in the Gangland killings.
Okay. So again, I can't feel sorry for that.
No.
What a pig.
Just again for the Anthony Dowdley and Patrick Carlin, I'll say this: I got a lot of this information from this book, which I'm holding up to the camera for those who are listening and don't know what I'm doing. So it's called Lawyer X. So they posit that this is the man who committed the murder, but
they
it's
couldn't
never.
prove it.
No, it's never solved. I mean, yeah, I don't think there's ever any. Anyway, we'll get to what evidence there is against that guy. But as I say, the person who actually pulls the trigger really becomes. Not that they're not guilty of murder, but they're almost irrelevant by the end of it if you are chasing the people who pay him to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So Paul Dale is clear, he has alibis for the actual day of the murder.
Okay.
So can't have actually pulled the trigger. But it is assumed that he is somebody who is involved. Now, the other corrupt police officer, Michelle, so he hasn't spoken to police. He hasn't said anything about the break-in. So the only person of the three of them, Michelle, Paul Dale, and Terry Hodson, who were involved in the theft, who has talked, is Terry Hodson. So that's why Paul Dale had a motive to kill Terry, but not to kill.
Was Michelle also on bail?
They were all on bail.
All on bail.
Yes, they were all on bail. So obviously the charges for the break-in to the house against Paul Dale are pretty hard to run now.
Yes.
Because they have two people who are caught at the scene, Hodson and Michelle.
And the one who talked is dead.
Hodson who talked is dead. Michelle's not talking. Right. Dale wasn't there, wasn't caught.
Yes.
So they can't proceed.
He was busy counting the $750,000.
Well, he was at home with his house guests because he couldn't come. That's certainly what he told them, that he had guests at home and couldn't come because it was grand final night.
Of course.
Things move on, and we will return to what happens to Paul Dale later. But things move on in the Gangland War and with Nicola Gobbo herself. She, in fact, has a stroke in 2004.
Really?
And it turns out she's got a congenital heart problem, which some people have, which can cause strokes.
I just heard about that this week.
Yeah.
Someone who has that.
So she is only 31 years of age. She has a stroke. Having said
young.
that, she lives a pretty full-on lifestyle.
Is she still partying?
Still partying.
Okay.
Well, when you say partying, she seems to be having dinners or being at the pub every single night.
Right.
So she seems.
Has she had her children yet?
No, not yet. So, one of her work colleagues, and I was thinking about this as a lawyer reading the book and knowing how much prep you need to do to go into court to do things. I was just thinking, I do not know when it is that she's at work because she's telling the police about all of these conversations she's having at the pub with so-and-so or at a dinner with so-and-so. She seems to be out every single night of the week.
Maybe she's a night owl. Does
Possibly.
her work when
Possibly.
she gets home.
The problem is that court starts, when magistrates court starts at 9.
Yeah.
The trials start at 10. If you're a night owl, that's great, but you've still got to be there.
But her old boss said she was very quick at reading things and stuff. So maybe she can just get it all done in short time frames.
I think one of the other things about criminal law is it's very fact based. Once you know the criminal law rules, they're all pretty they're all pretty obvious. I mean,
you're not having to wrestle with obscure.
Well, I think probably you should always be alive to them and look to run arguments that are available. But I do know a lot of criminal practitioners who never pick up a law book. It's all the facts. They just go and argue the facts.
Well, and it's always the same laws. So if you do enough of it, you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
Like absolutely. I could tell you sections of the code, and I haven't practiced for ages.
Yeah. Yeah. Criminal code changes slowly. I mean, even in other states, murder's still murder. It's always been the same.
Yes.
All right. So she has this stroke. She goes to hospital. She decides, that's a perfect opportunity. She keeps saying to the police, I want to stop all of this. And they're like, well, here's your opportunity. You are hospitalised. You can validly say to Tony Mockbell, listen, I can't represent you anymore. She's worried about getting out, as it were.
So she was saying she wanted to stop all of the representation of the Gangland people.
Yeah.
Not the informing.
Well, I think all of it.
Right.
She said she was informing to get Tony Mockbell off her back, as it were, by having him convicted.
Right.
She couldn't. She felt one of her explanations was she just felt she couldn't get out. She was a very close associate. I mean, she is going to dinner with him regularly.
And I guess there would be truth to that. I mean, they're not going to let their lawyer, who knows so much, just walk away, I guess.
Sure, but this is one of the issues that I have with how she behaved as a lawyer, because as lawyers what happened is people come to you when they have a problem. And I mean, in some senses that's a bit frustrating because you're like, why did you do that? Had you spoken to me beforehand, I would have suggested you not do that.
Yes.
So you were often having to clean up people's mess. But in some senses that's protection because you're not around before they create the mess.
Yeah.
Whereas she is so involved in it and knows what they're doing. And that's why there's no point informing after they've created the mess because, I suppose there is because the police still don't know things. But, she can inform, which we'll talk about soon, I hope, about the world's biggest ecstasy bust. She tells them when it's arriving. She tells the police when it's arriving because she knows.
Yeah, so they're not going to let her just walk away.
No, I know.
She's privy to...
But I don't know why you'd get yourself in that position. I would be, if people were trying to tell me stuff about stuff that hadn't happened, I'd be like, shut your mouth, I don't want to know.
Well, I know, but, she, from all accounts, liked the flashy life and they're rolling in money and...
Yes.
What's not to like if that's what your goals are?
Oh, absolutely.
Did she take drugs?
No, I don't think she was a drug taker. Smoked, drank. Don't think she was drug. Sorry. After this stroke that she has constant pain in her jaw and takes painkillers pretty regularly.
Right.
For that.
But not illegal drugs.
Not illegal
as far as we know.
No.
Okay.
All right. So that happens in 2004. She doesn't take that as the opportunity that it probably was for her to stop representing all of these people. She sort of stays in it. Now, just as an example of, how she works for both sides, in December 2004, she appears for a Mockbell underling who was charged with the murder of the Moran. So I said in last episode that Jason and Mark Moran had shot Carl Williams in 1999 and He'd survived and had a grudge against them, understandably, ever since, which led to him organising that Mark Moran was shot in his driveway. Jason Moran was shot a couple of years later in 2003, and this was a pretty horrible killing. And I think created an enormous amount of public pressure on the police to get this solved because it was so public and so horrible.
Was that the one in the van?
Yes.
With his kids?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Jason Moran is sitting in What from the photos looks like an old model Tarago, and I was always a fan of the Tarago.
No, I
particularly the old
am
model.
not a van mum.
Okay,
No.
I love a good van. So he's sitting in the front seat he's in the driver's seat of the van with there was 5 kids in the car. They just finished Auskick practice and they're at the local park.
Yeah.
In the front seat is another bloke, Pasquale Barbaro, who was again another drug sort of kingpin. And they were killed execution style. So somebody just pulls up, steps out, shoots them both in the head. Takes 3 seconds. They're both dead in front of the children.
And then they just leave?
Just left, got in a car, drove off. So it's very professional hit, very quick.
The trauma of those poor children.
Yeah, but just a horrible public killing in front of children. And I think that created an enormous amount of pressure on the Victorian police to get this gangland war finished because people just didn't want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember that one and I don't remember all the others.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
she's representing their alleged killer.
Correct. In December 2004. Anyway, things sort of lurch along. She's then in court for Tony Mockbell representing him on a drug trafficking trial. She's the junior barrister, I think, working with a silk, so a QC.
Casey.
Now Casey, King's Counsel, and informing on clients and talking to the police about their tactics, what they're going to argue.
Oh my God.
Just unbelievable, isn't it? But what a breach of trust between the barristers on the defence side, because the QCs, she works with QCs a number of times, and they never know that she is a police informer.
Wow.
Yeah, and so when this comes out in 2014, she is kicked out of chambers. The barristers were all like,
she would be.
Get out. Yeah, understandably. But,
for not just the breach of ethics, but the breach of trust and that.
Yeah.
Like, how could you keep someone like that in chambers?
No, I know. Well, there was in a case that she wasn't on, there was an accusation, which again, she's always denied, that she broke into a fellow barrister's chambers to get information.
Wow.
And when I say broke
moly.
into, it's not, if you barristers' chambers, if I can describe them for you, you have a whole series of offices and a sort of a main area where the secretaries are. But often the front door of the office is locked, but none of the individual rooms are. So in terms of breaking in, it's not hard. You can just walk in.
But you just wouldn't do that.
No, and she could get into that chambers because she has a room there. But to go into someone else's room and rifle through their stuff.
That's outrageous.
Yeah, isn't it? She's always denied it, but anyway. Towards the end of this trafficking trial, Tony Mockbell disappears. Everyone thinks he's gone overseas. He actually hadn't for a while, for a few months. He had been around in Australia and he had, because he had a girlfriend. And
I knew you were going to say he had a girlfriend.
We've all been there.
Cliche.
So he ends up.
I can't believe you just said we've all been there. I have not been there.
You haven't done things for love that are probably not in your best interest?
That is not what we're talking about here.
Oh, okay. In a broader sense, I think we are. So I always want to know, how do you escape from Australia? How do you think you'd do it?
Well, I think you'd have to go on a PJ.
Oh, what's a PJ?
Private jet.
Oh, okay.
Or a boat, I would imagine.
Boat, correct. Well, obviously, because we live on an island, we're not driving off, yes. But where would you get your boat from?
The dock?
Okay. Well, he doesn't actually get it from a dock. He goes to Western Australia.
Oh, right.
I think it was off Broome somewhere, some remote location, and the yacht comes in and he goes out and gets on it and sails straight to Greece or something, I think.
Yeah, I think that would make the most sense.
I think, where was he from? Tony Mockbell. I think he's from Lebanon. Anyway, he's eventually caught in Greece, so he goes overseas.
Hope he had a good couple of years there.
I think he did. That's 2006. He disappears. Now, he, I think, has started to sort of query Gobbo. Because over the years, because she had been representing both sides, she had often been threatened. She had an occasion where I think Mockbell's younger brother had gone in and held her by the throat in her own office. Yeah, saying you're a dog. Yeah.
Because of suspicions.
Well, because she kept appearing for people who were on the other side of the gangland
which
war.
was obvious. They knew that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, they didn't like it.
They didn't like it.
She's playing with fire.
I know. I completely agree. But, I mean, in some senses, maybe you'd call it stupidity, but, I mean, I suppose it's a form of bravery. She keeps doing it.
I don't know that it's bravery.
Well,
I think it's fueled by greed.
I mean, in a sort of a theoretic sense, one client can't say you're not allowed to a lawyer. You're not allowed to represent another client. That's not a matter for them. You're a free agent to represent whoever you like,
Unless there's a conflict.
unless there's a conflict of
Which
interest.
that is like, you're very quick to disparage police, and I am on board with the fact there were corrupt police officers here. But talking about casting a blight on the profession, like, if lawyers are not upholding ethical standards, then what the hell have we got? This is a huge breach of expectation of a legal professional.
Oh, I completely agree. But the interesting thing is, I think one of the reasons that we are so shocked by it is because it never happens. There's no incidents that
Never.
Well, you give me another example. I can't think of one.
Of what?
Of a defense lawyer being a police informant.
Oh, okay. I don't know about that, but there are other examples of defense lawyers not acting ethically.
Sure.
And we're always outraged by it.
Sure.
Oh, no?
Well, I suppose it depends on the ethic. I mean, outrage is a very strong word. Sometimes, you're like, you probably shouldn't have done
I'm outraged.
Okay.
Because as a former prosecutor, we do act for justice.
Jeepers creepers.
That's very restrained of you.
It was, yes.
Yeah.
Well, look, police officers and prosecutors have a difficult job to do. And if they do what they're supposed to do, just like lawyers, the system would work perfectly. Well, the system would work as well as the system that we could organise. So I'm annoyed at anybody who doesn't do their job.
Yeah. Yes, same.
So Tony Mockball disappears as 2006. Carl Williams is finally arrested. Interestingly, they arrest him when they're just randomly raiding a drug house, and he happens to be there.
Oh.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, sweet.
Bad luck,
Yeah,
Carl.
tough. He gets arrested. He then is put on trial for a whole series of things, including the murder of Lewis Moran, the father. I didn't even talk about that. He gets shot as well. But also Jason Moran. He's put on trial for those murders. Now, there's no suggestion he actually committed either of those murders, but that he had commissioned those murders.
Was Carl Williams the guy who cut his ear in prison?
Oh.
Oh, no, that was Chopper.
Oh, Chopper Reed, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
I think he was also a police informant. I get from the book
Maybe.
that I'm reading. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I
got sidetracked.
No, you're right. So I'll go back to the Terry Hodson thing, but just briefly I want to mention that. So we're in 2008, and again, is it bravery or stupidity? Nicola Gobbo is at dinner and somebody sets her convertible BMW that's outside the restaurant on fire.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty big message, isn't it?
Yeah, these are the big guns. Like, this is not, gosh, you've pissed me off. I'm not going to go to coffee with you.
It gets even weirder. So like, she doesn't run out and go, oh, damn, my car's on fire. I think she just sits there and has dinner and someone puts out her car. They find in the boot of her car 2 bags full of money.
Was that the $750,000?
I don't know.
I want to know where that went.
Okay,
So
I don't
much
know where
money.
the $750,000 went.
How can it just disappear?
But it's incredible how much money. I mean, they do a raid on her house years later and they find some, like $20,000 in different bags of cash around in her garage. And she's like, I didn't even know I had that. Like the amount of,
God.
yeah. And I think as a lawyer,
when the car was set on fire, the boot
obviously didn't get burned. They find it in the boot.
That was a gamble.
She doesn't even seem to care. I mean,
as in, do we think she put the money there, or was it planted?
I'm assuming she was paid. I'm assuming she's paid in bags of money.
Oh, like that's just where she kept her money.
People are handing her money. I mean, I always think it's a huge red flag when people want to pay in cash. So I've represented the Hells Angels members before they were outlawed by the Newman government. Back in the day when they were legal, I represented the Hells Angels, a number of members, on their traffic matters. I was their go-to traffic guy for a few years when I was a junior barrister. And some interesting stories came out of that. They would always want to pay in cash. You can't sort of say no because otherwise you won't get paid. But I would always take it straight to the bank and bank it because I didn't want there to be any suggestion about cash and declaring. And
yes,
nowadays my experience is no lawyers wants cash. They don't want to be paid in cash. They want it all through electronic transfer. So it's all monitored, because there's real issues about whether you are being paid with drug money or
you're being used to
launder money, wash money. So anyway, so she has, this is in 2008, 2 large bags of cash in her BMW that's set on fire. All right, so Carl Williams gets to jail, realizes he's going to be there for a long time, and he has some young children, which he realizes he misses their 3rd birthday or something, and he realizes he's also going to miss their 21st birthday. So you sort of start to think, that puts things in perspective.
Yes.
So he starts to make overtures to the police about giving information on crooked cops. So he identified, again, this is his story. Paul Dale has denied it. And he's never been tried on it, so it's never been tested. Carl Williams says that a week before Terry Hodson is murdered, Paul Dale gets in touch with Carl Williams through Nicola Gobbo. They have a conversation in which Paul Dale says, can you please
deal with them?
Well, no, I think he's upfront and says, can you kill them for me?
Wow.
I don't think they're speaking in code. Carl Williams obviously had that conversation a lot of times, because he's not fazed by it. He's like, leave it with me. $150,000 it cost. Paul Dale is alleged to have dropped the money in
Nicola Gobbo's boot.
No, Carl Williams' mother's wheelie bin.
Oh,
I know. I want to know who fished it out. I mean, unless the wheelie bin's full, you got to really get right in there. I don't know. Anyway,
gross.
So Carl Williams implicates directly Paul Dale in the murder of Terry Hodson.
Well, and also implicates Gobbo as the conduit.
Not
for the murder, but as a connection.
Sure, but I mean, if Paul Dale just says, I want to speak to Carl Williams, and Nicola Gobbo goes, leave it with me, Carl, can you call Paul? I mean, there's no criminal offence there.
But why is a police officer getting in touch with Carl Williams?
I don't know, but I don't think...
that has to be a bit suspicious.
Sure, but I don't think it rises to the level of being accessory to
No, but I'm just
murder.
saying it's like raised her as a factor in that whole scenario.
Oh, I think she's very much a factor in the whole Terry Hodson, Christine Hodson murder. Yeah. She appears at a number of different points during it. So Carl Williams has given this information to the police. They're very excited by it, and they commence proceedings against Paul Dale for the murder of Terry Hodson and his wife, Christine.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in April of 2010, Carl Williams is murdered in jail.
Convenient.
Well, if you recall that the last time there was somebody who was going to give evidence against Paul Dale, he was executed.
Yes.
And the next time somebody's going to give evidence against Paul Dale, he was executed.
Tell you what, you'd be pretty terrified if you were Gobbo.
Yes. Well, she was so terrified that that year before, 2009, she had threatened to commit suicide. And
who to?
To her police handlers. She was calling her police handlers like up to 10 times a day.
Wow.
Which is unbelievable, isn't it?
She's panicked.
I mean, I don't speak to my wife 10 times a day. I think if I called my wife 10 times a day, she'd be like, please stop calling me.
Yeah.
You know.
What are you saying? 10 times a day.
Well,
so she must have been beside herself.
But when is she doing work? She's drinking. She's going out to she's having meetings. She's on the phone 10 times a day.
Maybe she's got an unpaid intern.
I don't know what she's got. I couldn't exist in that life for, 24 hours. It would just be too much for my brain.
It's not sustainable.
No, her brain must have just been going all the time.
You wonder if that contributed. Oh, no, it was the heart. But the stress on the heart. Anyway.
So she's under 24-hour protection in 2009. Obviously the car being set on fire in 2008 is a bit of a red flag. So, because she's an official informer now.
Right, on the books.
On the books. Mm-hmm. And so the police give
still representing the Gangland people?
All of them. Yep.
So she's doing both?
Doing both. Yep.
She's crazy.
Yeah. Carl Williams is killed in jail. The prosecution against Paul Dale is withdrawn.
No key witness.
No key witness.
Mm. Did they ever interview Gobbo about what Carl Williams had told them about Dale? Like if she was the one who introduced them, did they ever interview her about that whole scenario?
She was giving them information all the time, and I think she'd given them information about
Like, why couldn't she be called as a witness?
what to say. Paul asked me to give him Carl's number, and I did. The other thing they were doing,
As if she wouldn't have known.
okay,
Well, she's sleeping with him.
intermittently apparently. She says only once. Anyway,
Missed opportunity.
Missed opportunity. Well, but the other thing is it, again, a huge red flag for a lawyer. She is constantly using burner phones.
Oh,
I mean, as they all are, because they're all drug dealers, and so they've all got burner phones. I suppose for people who don't know what burner phones are, you know, phones that are hard to trace. They're not smartphones. They tend to be those.
you don't have to have the plan. You don't have it
Yeah.
identified as yours.
Yeah, I think you've got to give a name, but it's obviously pretty
be any name.
laissez-faire. You just give some false name. And yeah, she's constantly using burner phones. So police can tap if they know, well, I mean, they know numbers, so that it's easier for them to follow because she's telling them the numbers that she's, so they have a number, they can log calls, you know, to see her calling Paul Dale, you know, Carl Williams calling Paul Dale, Carl Williams, because he sometimes calls from public phones, but they know Paul Dale's number, so they can trace that. And so they do cross-reference a lot of the information. I'm not sure if Nicola Gobbo actually told them that that's what she'd done, but they could sort of piece it together through their other avenues.
So she was giving useful information.
Oh, very useful.
Yeah.
I mean, they said that she was the most useful.
Well, she had all the inside info.
Yeah. Well, she, again, an interesting insight into her personality, wanted to be the most useful police informer that the Victorian Police had ever used.
Oh, my Lord.
And she said to them at one point, tell me who your most useful, you know, informer is. And if it isn't me, I'll work harder.
Okay. Yeah, she's problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Carl Williams is killed.
Case against Dale dismissed.
Well, no. They had another piece of evidence against Paul Dale.
Ah.
Yes.
What was it?
A recorded conversation he had with Nicola Gobbo. So in 2009, so 2007 they get the Carl Williams stuff. I don't know why in 2009, but for whatever reason, I think they wanted some more information. They ask Gobbo to wear a wire, go and meet Paul Dale, have a conversation with him. She does. She asks Paul Dale if what Carl Williams, I think she gives Paul Dale a copy of Carl Williams' statement to police and says, and then when he's read it, is that true? And he said, pretty much, something like that.
See, this is where I thought it was going to go the whole time.
Yeah.
Like how are they not using her more?
Okay, well, this is the conundrum that they have in this case, and then they have in subsequent cases. To use her is then to out her as a human source, and her ability to keep informing disappears.
She could get a badge as being the best
and
source.
The best source. Well, also her life is in danger. So the police then in every court case in the 2010s say her life's in danger and you have to suppress it all. So
right. So they have that statement or that
which
recording
they don't use. So that
to protect her.
To protect her. They just withdraw the prosecution. She is so sort of worn out, sick of it, whatever. I think they've stopped using her as a human source officially, but they stop and she just keeps calling them with information. So it's this sort of this, and they keep taking it. So it's this sort of toxic marriage where they are both just addicted to each other's toxic, behaviour. Victorian Police just can't stop using Nicola Gobbo, and she just can't stop telling them stuff.
No.
2010, she can stop. She's pretty sick of it by then. She sues them for $20 million. She sues she sues for negligence. With her,
had anything happened to her?
Confidential. Well, she'd had her car burnt.
But apart from that,
lots of death threats. Bullets in greeting cards. Your usual.
Oh, that's...
You know that. You know these things. How you do it.
Sure. Haven't received any for a while.
So
okay, so she's getting death threats.
Yeah,
so
and
it is pretty serious.
And her health is
deteriorating.
Pretty deteriorating. Yeah, she sues. They settle out of court $2.8 million.
Do they agree they were negligent?
Well, they settle out of court. I think there's probably a non-disclosure agreement. I don't know. I wasn't a lawyer
part of that.
I wasn't part of that.
No.
In case the Victorian Police are looking for legal advice, I'm available. So
I would steer clear.
In 2012, One of the complaints the Royal Commission makes about the Victorian Police is, why didn't you get legal advice at some point? Like, you're using a defence lawyer as an informant.
Yeah.
Did you think maybe we should just get a lawyer to just check this?
Was it approved up the chain?
Yeah.
Like, did the...
Well, the higher the officers went, the less they said they knew. But it turned out that the police commissioner knew,
and had approved.
She said in the Royal Commission she didn't know, but then they produced a whole lot of documents to show she was in meetings where they discussed it. So
right,
maybe she had forgotten, but certainly I'm not suggesting she lied to the Royal
something
Commission.
You
but
could forget. You know, if you've got a defence, if it's so... Anyway.
I don't know what it's like being the police commissioner. I suspect it's a busy job and you're hearing lots of information. So maybe you could forget it. All right. So finally in 2012, they go, maybe we should have an internal inquiry into all this. And so they get a retired police commissioner from years ago who hadn't been involved in any of this, and he does a review. It's called the Comrie Review, and he, who knows nothing about this and coming at it, but obviously knows police procedure and behaviour, is gobsmacked, and just scathing
of the police,
and of Nicola Gobbo,
and
says that I think he nominates a number of cases that would need to be revisited because they are potentially tainted. Yes.
Well, that's just like a black hole, isn't it?
Yeah. So what do you think the police do with this report?
Bury it?
Effectively. I think they do another report to look into that report, or, you know, with just some bureaucratic stuff that nothing happens. So
literally nothing happened.
Well, I think they were doing another report on the first report, or, you know, something.
Wow.
There's more litigation. The problem is that now things are starting to come out where Gobbo is being drawn in as a witness. And there was litigation in 2013, and I tried to find out what it was about, but it escapes me. But she is actually in court in 2013 in a closed hearing, and she's cross-examined about some of the particular aspect of her informing. So it's not made clear that she is generally an informer, how long she's been informing, but for that particular incident, it comes out that she'd been informing. It's all kept secret. Nobody knows about it except, you know, a Supreme Court judge and a handful of lawyers. But you can imagine the whispers that would go around. As you know, lawyers are notorious gossips. Those whispers reached the ear of a journalist. Anthony Dowsley,
right,
co-author of this book, Lawyer X. He, in 2013, hears whispers of it, and he starts to do some investigating. And because because Nicola Gobbo had represented so many people, and because bits and pieces had come out here and there, he could actually start to put it together, not through publicly available, but using some publicly available stuff, but then
interviews and stuff.
And police officers giving a tidbit here and a tidbit there.
Right.
He starts to put it together. It takes him almost a year. By 2014, he's got an article ready to go for the Sun Herald. And
a year just for the article?
Well, because he had to put it all together. It took a while.
Right. That's good research.
Because he didn't have one person who gave him everything. No. He had a lot of people who give him bits and pieces.
Yes.
And then he has to tie it all together.
Amazing.
Yeah.
On him for doing that.
2014, it goes public. So it's published on a Monday. On the Sunday, he rings Nicola Gobbo and says, "Hi, I'm going to go. This is what we're going to say. Do you have any comment?" He says she's friendly. She just denies it. But of course, they then get a call from the Victorian Police who say, "What's all this about? Yeah, can we have a copy of it?" And as a professional courtesy, the Sun Herald provides them with a copy of it. And then they are in court, and there's an urgent injunction, and they are then banned from using Nicola Gobbo's name. So they come up with the moniker Lawyer X.
So he could still publish the article.
Well, they had to be careful about some stuff. So they couldn't. Not only could they not use a name, but they then couldn't use stuff that.
Some of the identifying.
Sure, but when they say a lawyer who has been integral in representing many people in the Gangland,
narrows that focus.
It narrows
doesn't
it because she was there. Well, there was really only a handful, and interestingly, there was another female solicitor who was similar in that she was let's say, fashionable, flamboyant. I won't comment on her clothing. But again, represented a whole lot of these people. And she was sort of the one who was representing the ones that Gobbo wasn't representing.
Right.
And she starts getting threats on her life. She knows nothing about it. Well, she actually had started to suspect Nicola Gobbo might be doing this.
So she's not an informer.
She's not an informer at all.
No.
She starts getting threats on her life.
Oh, because she could have been the one.
Well, because the Gangland people are reading this going, oh, it must be her.
Yeah.
So luckily nothing happens to her. But, I mean, you can appreciate how she'd be a bit annoyed by it all. She's fine. She's still working. Anyway, so that then prompts another internal police review, this time by a retired Supreme Court judge. That retired Supreme Court judge, whose name is Kellum, so that's the Kellum review, he, again, is like, oh, my God, I can't believe this. And he identifies specifically, I think he identifies 20 cases. I think the old police commissioner said there was 12 cases that would need to be reviewed. I think that Kellum says there's 20 cases. And Kellum says this report needs to be sent to the Director of Public Prosecutions for the Director's
consideration.
Opinion. So it is duly sent to the Director of Public Prosecutions, who looks at it and says, I agree, we need to write to all these people who are currently in jail and tell them that their lawyer was a police informant. And guess what the Victorian Police say?
Can't disclose.
No. And they then commence litigation against the Director of Public Prosecutions to stop him telling the people in jail.
But so why? Why were Victorian Police so adamant she not be identified?
Well, they said for her safety, but I think there was as much self-preservation as anything.
Because I was going to say her safety here, 20 cases of potential miscarriage of justice. Like, where's the balance there? Like that, it seems very odd to place so much weight on one versus many.
I think the DPP says definitely 7 cases.
7.
But we need to review there's probably more.
They're sitting in prison.
They're sitting in prison, including Tony Mockbell.
Oh.
Because he's been caught in Greece, meanwhile, put in jail, put on trial for murder.
Was he convicted?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember who again, not a murder that he's actually committed, but a murder he's ordered.
Commissioned, yeah.
So he's sitting, oh no, I think he's only in jail for drugs. Anyway, it's some ridiculously long sentence, 35 years or something. So, But the police went to, so the Sun Herald doesn't publish one article. They publish many articles. They had to go to court 15 times over the next 4 years to fight. So the Victorian police would fight every time they were, in the end, it got to this ridiculous stage where they weren't allowed to use the moniker Lawyer X.
Because that was
sort of identified, it just got to this crazy stage. But the amount of legal money that the Victorian Police spent on this must be phenomenal. 15 times for Silken Jr. in court on an urgent basis. So the public are starting to become aware. People, Nicola Gobbo is kicked out of her chambers. She really has no friends in the law much anymore.
Has she had children yet?
I think, when does she have her first child? I think 2016, 2017.
So not yet.
Through IVF. I don't think she's ever disclosed the name of the father because probably his life would be in danger too. But the rumour is, there's a number of rumours. One, that it was a serving police officer. Another, that it was a guy who was convicted for drugs and who was in jail.
Or did she have 2 children?
She did have 2 children.
Maybe it's one of each.
It could be one of each. So the police keep saying to her, you need to come into protection. She says, I don't want to. And they threaten to take her children off her if she doesn't.
Wow.
They never actually do that, but she is very upset that they keep threatening that.
Oh, it's just so... Ugh.
So this litigation, she has to give evidence in litigation between the Victorian Police and the Victorian Director of Public Prosecutions. She's a party to it. She's on the police side because she doesn't want the DPP.
Yeah.
So a whole lot of what she's done comes out in that litigation. It is completely secret. It doesn't appear in a law list. Nobody knows it's on. Media aren't allowed. All this stuff comes out. Eventually, the judge at first instance rules that the DPP is right and that these letters should go to the accused, or the people who've been convicted, and they've got tainted convictions. Victorian Police appeal that to the Court of Appeal of Victoria. Court of Appeal agree and say, yes, no, these letters should be
Needs
sent
to
to these
go.
people. Victorian Police appeal that to the High Court. High Court say, what are you guys doing in Victoria? What is in the water? You definitely should be telling these people that their convictions have been tainted. But this litigation had been under pseudonym, so AB versus CD, And so in November 2018, High Court finally comes down and says, you should definitely send these letters, but doesn't make an order about revealing the name of Lawyer X.
Oh, it's still suppressed.
Yeah. So when the High Court does that, the Victorian government finally say, let's have a Royal Commission. They appoint the Honourable Margaret McMurdo AC to be the commissioner, and a retired police commissioner, but he has to recuse himself because it turns out that Nicola Gobbo has been informing him, since 1995 or something. So
he was potentially
conflicted, so he goes out. So she runs this commission of inquiry, and in early 2019, the High Court finally say you can reveal her name, and so her name is finally out there. But it's an open secret; everybody knows who it is. She had stopped working in the law years before.
But so, go.
Well, the commission of inquiry runs till the end of 2020. Final report is delivered. It is recommended that the investigations into prosecuting police officers is made. The Victorian government get Justice Nettle, the retired Victorian Supreme Court judge. He's just retired from the High Court. They say, why would you like to be the special investigator, head up the office of the special investigator to investigate, to build cases against police officers to charge? He says, thanks very much, I'd love to. 2 years later, that's 2021 that happens. 2 years later in 2023, he has no power to actually charge himself. It has to, I think, be okayed by the Director of Public Prosecutions. He recommends for 3 people to be prosecuted. The director says no. He resigns. Office of the Special Investigator is closed.
And that's it?
That's it.
But so out of all of this, does Nicola Gobbo not get charged with anything?
Not get charged with anything? No police officer
Is
gets
she
charged
struck off the bar?
I don't know if she's struck. I didn't look at that. She's been in hiding since. So when she appeared at the hearing for the Royal Commission, she appeared by phone, and she has been living out of Australia, I think people think, and she's in the wind.
I actually can't understand how. Like, okay, so she had death threats, but really, she has skated on through.
Well, she's got some pretty significant health issues, and
but that
obviously she's now living in hiding.
But that wasn't because of anything anyone did to her. That was a heart condition, you said.
Yeah, but she has other health conditions, all stress related, but admittedly she's a smoker.
And you were talking about costs before. I did look at one thing to do with this. The bill for the Royal Commission was $39.5 million.
Wow.
On top of the $1.5 million a month that Victoria Police were paying for staff and legal fees for the inquiry.
Yeah.
Her legal fees were more than $2 million, and it doesn't take into account the millions that were spent fighting to keep her identity a secret.
Yeah, that's the 15 occasions they went to court.
Nor the expected payouts to the affected clients. So that's so much money from one woman's duplicity.
Guess how many convictions have been overturned because of
0?
3. That's it. Tony Mockbell not amongst them. He's still curling his heels in jail because they're informed that this has happened. They asked for relevant material from the Victorian Police, and the Victorian Police, the complaint is, I'm not involved in the matter, but the complaint is the Victorian Police are very slow to provide material, often don't provide a complete, material. So there's only been 3, and not including Tony Mockbell.
That's not very satisfying, is it?
It is not. I don't think, as a lawyer.
Well, I knew I did not know much about Lawyer X, but that was a complex schmozzle of a situation. And I feel like she really did get off lightly.
Oh, I mean, she obviously is living in hiding and
with her bags full of money.
Well, 2.8 million doesn't go that far. When you got 2 kids, I don't know.
I could use it. Anyone want to give me 2.8 million? I'll use it. No worries.
Maybe you'll find the $750,000 in cash.
I'm going to go down and have a look for that. I'm pretty sure it was Dale and I'm going to say it was Dale and...
Well, he's denied that. We're just going to say that publicly.
Gobbo. I think they did it. They probably called the police. They were probably the neighbours who heard the crash of the break-in.
They got it.
What a mess. She is a disgrace to the legal profession.
I can't deny that.
I'm surprised you picked a case that casts such aspersion on a defence barrister.
Should we do prosecutorial misconduct next time?
Well, we'd be hard pressed to find a case like that.
Well, can I say the prosecutors come out of this quite well. I was very impressed with the DPP and his approach, and then fighting litigation against the Victorian Police.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there you go. Well, wonders never cease.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. That was
thanks,
amazing.
Lizzie. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Follow, subscribe, like
and
share.
subscribe.
We need you all to encourage listeners so that we can keep on doing this.
Agreed.
It's too much fun.
Thanks, Lizzie.
Bye, Joe.
Thanks for tuning into this episode. You can find links to the cases that we discussed in the description. You can also find a link to Guardian Criminal Law, and a big shout out to them for making this podcast possible.
The majority of criminal cases involve people, normal people, people like you, people like me, who find themselves in an unusual set of circumstances that would not usually occur in their life. My name's Mark Savick and I'm here to assist you with your criminal matter. I look forward to hearing from you and being of assistance to you.
If you're interested in clips, you can look at them on Instagram and TikTok. Just search for Justice Matters Pod. See you next episode.